Years after rejecting me, my friend confessed love. After escaping her abusive boyfriend, we had coffee, and she explained how she'd always regretted turning me down years ago. When I didn't respond with enthusiasm, her eyes filled with tears. She asked if I was getting back at her for the past, but I simply told her I had moved on long ago and wasn't interested in reopening old wounds. Sometimes timing is everything, and ours had simply passed. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I, 32 male, want to start by giving some background so this all makes sense. I'm a landscape architect at a mid-sized firm in Boston, making around $85,000, which isn't terrible but doesn't go super far in this overpriced city. I live in a small one-bedroom in Somerville that I'm barely affording, while still paying off student loans from my degree at UMass. I've had a few relationships over the years, but nothing that really stuck. My last serious girlfriend was about 4 years ago, and that ended when she got a job offer in Seattle that was too good to pass up. I've always been what you'd call a nice guy, and I don't mean that in the toxic Reddit way. I'm the friend who helps everyone move, remembers birthdays, and listens to people's problems at 2 a.m. My sister Jen tells me I need to stop being such a doormat sometimes, but honestly, it's just who I am. I like being there for people, even if sometimes it means I get taken advantage of. About 3 years ago, my therapist, yeah, I go to therapy, it's actually been really helpful, suggested I needed more social interaction outside of work. My job involves a lot of time alone drawing up plans and visiting sites, so I don't get much day-to-day social contact. I decided to join a recreational volleyball league, even though I'm not particularly athletic. Just thought it might be a good way to meet new people. That's where I met Allison, 31 female. From the moment I laid eyes on her, I was smitten. She wasn't just physically attractive, she had this magnetic energy that drew everyone in. She taught English at a private high school, making around $65,000 from what she mentioned once. She was always telling these wild stories about entitled rich parents, trying to bribe her for better grades, or complaining that their precious little Timmy deserved an A despite turning in garbage work. Our team practiced twice a week and played matches on weekends. A group of 8 of us became really tight and always grabbed food after games. Jason, 30 million, was also part of our group. A corporate finance guy who made well into the 6 figures and never let anyone forget it. He drove a BMW, wore designer clothes to casual hangouts, and always picked up the check just so he could flash his black card. He had his sights set on Allison from day one, always finding excuses to touch her arm when talking or offering to drive her home. Over that first year, our friend group became really close. We celebrated birthdays together, helped each other move apartments, except Jason, who always hired movers instead of helping himself, and even rented a beach house in Cape Cod for a weekend, where we all got sunburned and stayed up way too late playing board games and truth or dare, like we were in college again. During this time, I found myself thinking about Allison constantly. We texted almost daily about random stuff, memes, Netflix recommendations, complaints about work. I thought we had a special connection. We'd often stay up texting until 1 or 2 a.m. about everything from silly stuff to deep conversations about our dreams and fears. I really thought there was something there. I remember this one time when she texted me at midnight because she couldn't sleep. We ended up having this 3-hour conversation about our childhoods, our parents' divorces, turns out we both came from broken homes, and our fears about repeating their mistakes. I felt like I knew her on a level that nobody else in our friend group did. She told me things she claimed she'd never told anyone else, like how she still blamed herself for her parents' split even though she was only 10 when it happened. I opened up to her about my own insecurities too, stuff I rarely talk about with anyone. Looking back, I wonder if she was just collecting ammunition to use against me later. But at the time, it felt real. It felt like we were building something meaningful. After knowing Allison for about a year and a half, I finally worked up the courage to tell her how I felt. This wasn't easy for me. I've always struggled with putting myself out there after being rejected a bunch in high school and college. The thought of ruining our friendship kept me awake for several nights, but I figured it was worth the risk. One evening after practice, I asked Allison if she wanted to grab coffee, just the 2 of us. We went to this hipster coffee shop near the gym. I still remember everything about that moment, how my hands were sweating so much I could barely hold my mug, the way she twirled her hair while I was talking, the indie music playing just loud enough to be annoying. I told Allison that I had feelings for her beyond friendship, and I wanted to know if she'd go on a real date with me. Allison stared at her latte for what felt like forever before responding. She gave me the classic "I really value our friendship" speech and said she wasn't looking to date anyone because she was focusing on her career and considering a PhD program. She hit me with every cliche in the book except, "It's not you, it's me." I tried to play it cool, saying I understood completely and hoped we could still be friends. She seemed relieved and immediately started chatting about some drama with her students, as if I hadn't just laid my heart on the line. I sat there nodding and smiling, feeling like an idiot while she went on about how some kid had tried to plagiarize an essay from SparkNotes. The whole time, I just wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. That night, I went home and played Call of Duty until 3 a.m. to distract myself from the rejection. But I respected her decision. Over the next few weeks, I made sure to act normal around her. We continued with our usual volleyball practices and group hangouts. Gradually, I started to accept the friend zone and focused on moving forward. She didn't make it easy, though. After turning me down, she actually seemed to text me more often. Late night check-ins, inside jokes, asking for my opinion on everything. Once she even called me crying because she got a flat tire and needed help. I drove 30 minutes to change it for her, and she hugged me for what felt like an eternity, telling me I was the best and she was so lucky to have me in her life. Mixed signals much? Then, less than 2 months after turning me down with her not looking to date bullshit, Allison shows up at our Friday night hangout holding hands with Jason. I nearly choked on my soda. Everyone else was all excited for them, offering congratulations while I sat there trying not to show how gutted I was. It wasn't just that she was dating someone else. It was the blatant lie about focusing on her career and not wanting to date. Seeing them together made it crystal clear that her rejection wasn't about timing or priorities. She just wasn't into me. I was good enough to listen to her problems at 1 a.m., but not good enough to date. The worst part was when Jason put his arm around her and kissed her temple. She made direct eye contact with me across the table. There was this weird little smile on her face that I couldn't read. Was it apologetic? Smug? Embarrassed? I'll never know for sure, but my gut tells me she was gauging my reaction, watching to see if I was hurt. Something inside me just clicked off that night. The feelings I had for Allison disappeared. Not because I was bitter, okay, maybe a little, but because I realized I'd been played. I need someone who's actually excited about being with me, not someone who sees me as a backup option. Despite feeling like shit, I continued being friends with both Allison and Jason. I genuinely tried to be happy for them, or at least to fake it convincingly. We kept up with the volleyball league, though I started missing practices more often, telling everyone it was because of a big project at work where I was designing an extensive corporate campus that could potentially lead to a promotion to senior landscape architect if I nailed it. The truth was, I couldn't stand seeing them together. All the PDA, the baby talk, the way she'd sit on his lap during our hangouts. It was like she was deliberately turning up the affection when I was around. Our mutual friends started giving me sympathetic looks, which was almost worse than the couple's behavior. I hated feeling like the pathetic guy pining after a girl who chose someone else. Allison and I still texted occasionally, but the frequency dropped significantly. The weird thing was, she became super close with my sister Jen, who had moved to Boston after her divorce. They started going shopping together and meeting for brunch every Sunday. I was glad Jen had made a friend since she was still pretty broken up about her marriage falling apart, but sometimes it felt weirdly like Allison was trying to stay connected to me through my sister. I remember bringing this up to Jen once, and she got defensive, saying I was being paranoid and that Allison barely mentioned me during their hangouts. "Not everything is about you, Mike," she said, rolling her eyes. I dropped it, not wanting to cause drama, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. About 8 months after they started dating, Jason and Allison broke up. This surprised everyone because they always acted like the perfect couple on social media, always posting these sickeningly cute couples photos from fancy restaurants where Jason would drop $300 on dinner to impress everyone. Jason stopped coming to our gatherings entirely. Allison showed up less frequently too, and when she did join us, she seemed different, quieter, checking her phone constantly, making excuses to leave early. Our friend group started to splinter, with some people remaining closer to Jason and others sticking with Allison. I tried to stay neutral, although I was admittedly closer to Allison's side of the group. Then one night, my sister Jen called me at like 2 a.m., crying. Allison had shown up at her apartment with bruises on her arms and a cut on her lip. According to Allison, Jason had been abusive throughout their relationship. Not just physically, but emotionally too. He'd apparently been tracking her location, checking her texts, telling her what to wear, and isolating her from friends. Classic controlling, abusive behavior. I was shocked. Jason, the guy who bought expensive gifts for everyone at Christmas and helped my buddy Pete get a job at his firm, had been hurting Allison behind closed doors? I felt horrible for her. Despite our complicated history, nobody deserves that kind of treatment. After this revelation, Allison started spending more time at my place and with Jen. We tried to be supportive, ordering takeout, watching movies, just being there. She seemed to be doing better gradually, though I suggested several times that she should talk to a professional about what she'd been through. She always brushed it off, saying she wasn't ready for that. I remember one night specifically. We were watching a movie at my place, and she kept inching closer to me on the couch. At one point, she put her head on my shoulder and sighed dramatically. When I didn't react, she sat up and asked me point blank if I still had feelings for her. I told her I valued her as a friend and was focused on being supportive during her difficult time. She seemed disappointed but dropped it. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags even then. The way she'd steer conversations to be about how awful Jason was, and then immediately pivot to reminiscing about how great things were between us, before everything got complicated. How she'd find excuses to touch me, fixing my collar, brushing lint off my shoulder, showing me something on her phone that required sitting pressed against me. At the time, I chalked it up to her needing comfort after what she'd been through. There was this one incident that seems important in hindsight. About a month after the bruise incident, we were all at a group dinner. Someone mentioned Jason, and Allison immediately tensed up. She started describing an argument they'd had where he supposedly grabbed her arm so hard it left marks. As she was telling the story, she rolled up her sleeve to show us a bruise. But here's the thing, it was on her right arm. I distinctly remembered that when she came to Jen's apartment that night, the bruises were on her left arm. When I mentioned this, not accusingly, just confused, she got flustered and said there had been bruises all over, and I must be misremembering. Maybe I was, but combined with other inconsistencies I started noticing, it planted the first seed of doubt. 3 weeks later, Allison texted asking if she could come over because she needed to talk to someone who understands. I ordered Thai food when she arrived. We talked about random stuff at first, a new season of Stranger Things, volleyball drama, her students' ridiculous excuses for late homework. My apartment is small as hell. The kitchen is barely big enough for one person. We were standing there, laughing about something stupid, when Allison suddenly leaned in and kissed me. Not a quick peck either. A full-on intense kiss. After about 10 seconds, I pulled away, making some dumb joke about being caught off guard. Allison laughed it off too, saying, "Whoops, guess I got carried away." She left shortly after, claiming she had to grade papers. That night, I couldn't sleep. The kiss had stirred up old feelings, but something felt off about it. It seemed calculated, like she had been waiting for the perfect moment. I also couldn't reconcile the idea of someone who was supposedly still traumatized from an abusive relationship suddenly being ready for romantic involvement. I decided to keep my guard up. The next morning, Allison showed up at my door unannounced, looking like she'd been crying all night. Her eyes were puffy and red, and she asked if we could talk. Sitting on my couch, she dropped the bomb that she'd been in love with me all along and had made the biggest mistake of her life by rejecting me. She wanted us to finally be together, like we were always meant to be. Then came the real manipulative shit. Allison claimed that when Jason first asked her out, she actually said no to him too, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Sending flowers to her school, showing up at her apartment with expensive gifts, basically love-bombing her until she finally gave in. According to her, if Jason hadn't been so persistent, she and I would have naturally ended up together, because she was just scared of her feelings when I first asked her out. As she talked, I started noticing things that didn't add up, like how she mentioned being scared of ruining our friendship, the exact words I had used when I confessed my feelings to her, or how she kept touching my arm and looking up at me with these sad puppy eyes that seemed practiced. The whole thing felt rehearsed, like she'd planned exactly what to say to push my buttons. She had this whole narrative prepared about how she'd realized during her relationship with Jason that she was comparing him to me constantly. "He was never as kind as you," she said. "Never as thoughtful. I'd get upset about something, and he'd tell me I was being dramatic, whereas you always listened." She claimed she'd even written my name in her journal repeatedly during her relationship with Jason, which, if true, was more creepy than flattering. When she finished her speech, I told her that while I cared about her as a friend, I just didn't have those romantic feelings anymore. The thought of dating her didn't excite me the way it once had. Allison's face instantly changed. The tears stopped flowing like someone had turned off a faucet, and she asked point blank if I was rejecting her to get revenge for her turning me down before. I assured her that wasn't the case, though privately I recognized that her initial rejection and subsequent lying had fundamentally changed how I saw her. My feelings had died when I realized she didn't see me as a first choice, and they weren't coming back. It wasn't about revenge. I just couldn't manufacture feelings that weren't there. Allison stormed out of my apartment, slamming the door behind her. That night, Jen called me, absolutely livid that I had rejected Allison. She said I was being cruel, and that Allison was my perfect match, and I was just being petty and vindictive. Jen insisted that Allison had been manipulated by Jason, calling him a textbook narcissist, and now I was punishing Allison for something that wasn't her fault. I was stunned by my sister's reaction. It was like Allison had completely brainwashed her. I tried to explain my side, but Jen wasn't having it. She actually hung up on me, something she hadn't done since we were teenagers. The next day, Allison sent a long text saying she needed time and space and suggested we should stop seeing each other completely. The audacity pissed me off, because when she rejected me years ago, I made the effort to preserve our friendship despite feeling like shit. I still valued her as a friend and hoped we could eventually return to that, but it seemed like with Allison, it was her way or nothing. I decided to respect her request for space, partly because I thought it might be good for both of us to cool off, and partly because I was pretty fed up with the drama. I threw myself into work, spending late nights at the office finishing designs for the corporate campus project. I also started going to a different gym and even tried out a new volleyball league across town, just to avoid any awkward run-ins. For about 2 weeks, things were quiet. No text from Allison, no mention of her from mutual friends. I started to think maybe this whole mess was finally behind me. Boy, was I wrong. Things got even more complicated a week later. After a friend's housewarming party where I'd had a few too many sodas, I'm a lightweight when it comes to sugar, embarrassingly enough, I came home to find Allison waiting in the lobby of my building. She somehow convinced the doorman to let her wait inside. She looked amazing, hair done, wearing this dress I'd once mentioned I liked, subtle makeup that highlighted her eyes. I was tired enough to not want to argue, so I let her come up, and we ended up talking for hours like old times. My guard was down, and when she kissed me again in my kitchen, I didn't stop her. Yeah, I fucked up. Allison spent the night. The morning after was awkward as hell. I woke up first, immediately regretting what had happened. I went out to get coffee, partly to clear my head and partly to delay the inevitable conversation. When I returned, Allison was just getting out of the shower, wearing my t-shirt, looking all domestic like she belonged there. After some small talk, Allison started talking about us and our future together. She had already planned our next few dates and talked about meeting her parents at Christmas, 2 months away. When I told her I still wasn't interested in a relationship with her, that the previous night had been a mistake, she completely lost it. She cried, screamed, accused me of using her for sex, and then suddenly switched to trying to seduce me again. The mood swings were jarring and, honestly, scary as hell. I finally managed to get her to leave by saying we both needed time to think. As soon as she left, I called Jen to tell her what happened. To my surprise, Jen wasn't surprised at all. Apparently, Allison had been obsessively talking about getting me back for weeks, even saying things like, "Once we sleep together, he'll be mine again." Jen had finally started to see through Allison's manipulation and had been distancing herself too. "You should have heard how she talks about you when you're not around," Jen told me. "At first it was all, 'Mike is so amazing. I made such a mistake.' But lately it's been more like, 'He's so stupid, he doesn't know what he wants.' She told me she had a plan to make you realize you belong with her. I thought she was just processing her feelings, but now I'm worried." I asked Jen if she believed Allison about Jason being abusive. Jen hesitated before answering. "I believe something bad happened in that relationship," she said finally. "But I'm starting to wonder if I got the whole story. The timeline keeps changing every time she talks about it. Last week she told me the abuse started 6 months into their relationship, but before that, she said it was almost immediately after they started dating." Jen also mentioned something else troubling. Apparently, Allison had asked detailed questions about my work, who my boss was, what projects I was working on, the names of my colleagues. At the time, Jen thought she was just showing interest in my life, but in light of everything else, it seemed more like reconnaissance. Over the next 2 weeks, Allison texted me constantly, alternating between angry rants about how I'd led her on, pathetic pleas for another chance, and random normal messages as if nothing had happened. I responded minimally, mostly just one-word answers or "I need space" when she'd asked to come over. Then the harassment really began. Allison started showing up everywhere. The coffee shop near my office, my gym, even the grocery store I frequented. She'd act like it was a complete coincidence, but it happened too often to be random. "Oh my gosh, we keep running into each other. It must be a sign from the universe," she'd say, with this weird giggle that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. She'd also accidentally text me things clearly meant for other guys, messages about dates or sexual stuff, then follow up with, "Oops, wrong person, so embarrassing." It was obvious she was trying to make me jealous. One time, I was working late at the office, and I got a call from the security desk saying someone was there to see me. It was Allison, claiming she was in the neighborhood and thought she'd surprise me with dinner. I told security to tell her I was in a meeting and couldn't come down. She then proceeded to wait in the lobby for 2 hours until I finally had to leave. When I tried to walk past her, she grabbed my arm and made a scene, crying and asking why I was being so cruel to her. A few of my colleagues witnessed this, which was mortifying. Another time, she showed up at my apartment at 11 p.m., pounding on the door and saying she just wanted to talk. When I didn't answer, she slid a note under my door that was alternately pleading and threatening, saying she missed me, but also that I would regret treating her this way. I kept the note as evidence, which would prove useful later. The most disturbing incident happened when I went on a date with a woman I'd met through a work connection. We were at a restaurant downtown when I spotted Allison sitting alone at the bar, staring at us. When she saw me notice her, she immediately got up and came over to our table. "Mike, what a coincidence!" she exclaimed, acting surprised. Then she turned to my date and introduced herself as Mike's ex, and started telling embarrassing stories about me. I was mortified and tried to end the conversation quickly, but the damage was done. My date texted me the next day saying she didn't want to get involved in complicated situations. This pattern continued for several weeks. I started documenting every interaction, saving texts, and even taking photos when I'd spot her following me. I was genuinely starting to fear for my safety. Around this time, I'd been working closely with a new urban planner at my firm named Megan. She was brilliant at her job, down to earth, and we clicked immediately. After collaborating on a major city park renovation project, I asked her out for dinner. Our first date was incredible. Easy conversation, similar interests, and none of the game playing I'd experienced with Allison. Things progressed naturally with Megan, and soon we were officially dating. What stood out most about my relationship with Megan was how drama-free it was. We had disagreements, sure, but we talked about them like adults. There were no mind games, no emotional manipulation, no bizarre tests of loyalty. Just two people who enjoyed each other's company and communicated openly. It was refreshing after the tornado. That was Allison. I was careful not to post anything about Megan on social media, but word travels fast in small social circles. Somehow, Allison found out. My guess is she saw a photo on my Instagram where Megan was tagged. What happened next showed her true colors completely. On a Monday morning, I was called into my boss's office. He looked uncomfortable and slid a printed email across his desk to me. "We received this on Friday," he said. "HR is getting involved, but I wanted to talk to you first." The email was from an anonymous account claiming to be a former job applicant who I had interviewed. It alleged that I had made inappropriate sexual comments during the interview and then tried to pressure her into meeting for drinks to discuss the position further. The email included personal details about me, my role at the company, what I looked like, even which projects I'd been working on, to make it seem credible. I was blindsided. Not only had I never done anything remotely like what was described, but I rarely even conducted interviews. That was mainly the HR department's job. I immediately told my boss this was completely false, and I had no idea where it came from. Thankfully, my boss knew me well enough to be skeptical of the claims. "This doesn't sound like you," he said, "but we have to investigate it. You'll need to meet with HR tomorrow." As I left his office in a daze, I got a text from Allison. "Having a bad day? Maybe you should reconsider who you're dating. I'm still here for you if you need me." That's when it clicked. The timing, the personal details that only someone who knew me would have, the fact that she texted me right after my meeting. Allison had sent the email. I immediately went to HR myself and told them everything about Allison's obsessive behavior, the stalking, and why I believed she was behind the false accusations. I showed them the increasingly erratic texts she'd been sending me. They listened sympathetically and promised to consider this context in their investigation. That night, Megan came over to my place for dinner. I decided to be completely honest with her about what was happening with Allison. I was terrified she'd decide I was too much drama and walk away, but instead, she was incredibly supportive. "This woman sounds unhinged," Megan said. "Have you considered getting a restraining order?" The next day, the HR investigation continued. They interviewed several colleagues who confirmed I rarely conducted interviews. They also found that no one matching the description in the email had applied for a job in our department in the past 6 months. By the end of the day, they concluded the complaint was likely fraudulent. My boss called me into his office again. "We're dismissing the complaint," he said. "But I have to ask, do you have any idea who might have sent this?" I took a deep breath and told him everything about Allison. He was understanding and offered the company's legal support if I needed it. Document everything, he advised, and consider legal action if it continues. But Allison wasn't done. The next day, she somehow got Megan's work email and sent her a long message detailing all the ways I was supposedly emotionally abusive and manipulative. She claimed I had led her on for years, slept with her multiple times while seeing other women, and had a history of love bombing women and then discarding them. She even attached screenshots of our text conversations that had been selectively edited to make me look bad. Megan, to her credit, showed me the email immediately. I almost laughed when I read it, she said. This doesn't sound anything like the person I know. Still, it was disturbing to see how far Allison was willing to go to sabotage my life. That night, I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but fuck it. She tried to get me fired and ruin my new relationship. I compiled all the evidence of Allison's harassment and manipulation. The texts, emails, security footage from my building showing her multiple unannounced visits, and the fake harassment claim. Then I sent it to our entire mutual friend group in one mass email with the subject line, "The Truth About Allison." In the email, I explained everything that had happened, from her rejection to the recent false accusations against me at work. I didn't embellish or exaggerate. The facts were damning enough on their own. I ended the email saying I wasn't looking for people to take sides, but I wanted everyone to know the truth about what had been happening. I also included testimony from 2 other guys in our extended social circle who reached out after hearing what happened to me. Turns out Allison had pulled similar stunts with them, dating them briefly, then becoming obsessive, then vindictive when rejected. Neither had ever said anything because they felt embarrassed and didn't think anyone would believe them. The response was immediate. Friends who had been distant since the drama began reached out to apologize for believing Allison's version of events. Several people forwarded me disturbing messages she'd sent them about me, trying to poison my reputation behind my back. One friend, Sarah, sent me screenshots of messages where Allison had claimed I was stalking her, showing up at her workplace, and sending threatening texts. The timestamps on these messages were from times when I was provably elsewhere, at work meetings or even out of town on a site visit. Allison had been constructing an elaborate alternate reality where she was the victim and I was the unstable one. Even Jason contacted me, saying he'd never been abusive. They had broken up because he caught her cheating, and when he confronted her, she threatened to tell everyone he had hit her if he revealed the cheating. He had text evidence backing this up, including a conversation where she explicitly threatened him. "If you tell anyone about Brad, I'll tell everyone you've been hitting me. Who do you think they'll believe?" Jason also revealed something that made my blood run cold. According to him, Allison had been obsessed with me even while they were dating. He'd found a journal where she wrote extensively about me, including entries about how she was going to make me pay for moving on after she rejected me. There were also detailed fantasies about us being together that Jason described as disturbing in their intensity. This had been a major source of arguments in their relationship. "I should have warned you," Jason said when we met for coffee a few days later. "But I was so messed up after how things ended with her, I just wanted to put it all behind me. I never thought she'd go this far with you." I asked him point blank if he'd ever been physical with her. He looked me straight in the eye and said no. She'd pick fights constantly, follow me around the apartment screaming, even throw things sometimes. But I never ever hit her or grabbed her. The bruises she showed people? I have no idea where those came from, but they weren't from me. I believed him. The Jason I'd known for years might have been a bit of a show-off, but he'd never shown any violent tendencies. Plus, his story aligned with the inconsistencies I'd noticed in Allison's accounts. The final blow came when Allison's school got wind of her behavior. One of our mutual friends was a parent of a student at her school and had shown the principal my email out of concern. The school placed Allison on administrative leave pending an investigation, as they couldn't have someone so unstable teaching teenagers. 3 weeks later, I received a desperate email from Allison. She'd lost her job, most of her friends, and was struggling financially. She begged me to tell everyone it was all a misunderstanding, that I had exaggerated things. She even offered to make it up to me in explicit terms. I didn't respond. A week after that, Jen told me Allison had reached out to her too, asking for money to cover rent since she couldn't find another teaching position mid-year. Jen declined. Apparently, Allison was now working at a coffee shop in a different neighborhood, making less than a third of her previous salary. In her message to Jen, Allison blamed me for ruining her life and said she was considering legal action against me for defamation. Jen asked if I was worried about this, but my lawyer assured me that truth is an absolute defense against defamation claims, and I had plenty of evidence to back up everything I'd said. The most disturbing development came when Megan was leaving work one evening and found her car vandalized. Deep scratches all along the driver's side, and a note on the windshield that said, He'll hurt you too. There was no proof it was Allison, but the timing was suspicious. We filed a police report and added it to the growing file of evidence for the restraining order I was now actively pursuing. As for me, things with Megan are going great 6 months later. We moved in together last month, and I've never been in a healthier relationship. My career is thriving too. I got that senior landscape architect promotion and a $15,000 raise. My friend circle is smaller now, but full of people I truly trust. The restraining order against Allison was granted after a judge reviewed all the evidence, including the workplace harassment, the stalking incidents, and the suspected car vandalism. She's legally required to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. She's also prohibited from contacting me or Megan in any way, directly or through third parties. I still get the occasional email from a new address I don't recognize, with no text in the body, just a way of letting me know she's still out there, still thinking about me. My lawyer says this technically violates the restraining order, but it's hard to prove it's definitely her. So I just document each one and try not to let it get to me. Looking back, I don't regret exposing Allison. Some might say it was harsh, but when someone tries to destroy your reputation and career with lies, they deserve whatever karma brings them. The experience taught me to trust my instincts about people and to value honesty and stability over drama and intensity. The most ironic part? If Allison had just been honest from the beginning, if she'd simply said she wasn't interested in me instead of lying about focusing on her career, we probably could have remained friends, and none of this would have happened. Her manipulation was the real relationship killer, not my rejection. Some of our mutual friends have tried to convince me to forgive her, saying she clearly has mental health issues and needs help, not punishment. I understand that perspective, but I also believe that mental health issues explain behavior but don't excuse it. She made calculated decisions to try to destroy my career and relationship. Those weren't impulsive actions. They were premeditated attempts to hurt me because she couldn't control me. I've spent a lot of time in therapy working through this whole experience. My therapist helped me see that I wasn't responsible for Allison's actions or her well-being. For a while, I carried this weird guilt. Like maybe if I had just given her another chance, all of this could have been avoided. But that's exactly the kind of thinking that manipulative people want you to have. They want you to feel responsible for their happiness. So that's my story. Still can't believe I dodged that bullet. Sometimes the person you think is the one that got away is actually the one you should run from. Update. Allison emailed me again yesterday. She's moving back to her hometown in Ohio to live with her parents. She apologized for everything, claiming therapy has helped her recognize her behaviors. Too little, too late. I wish her well from a distance. A very, very far distance. A few people have asked about Megan and how she handled all this drama so early in our relationship. Honestly, she's been incredible. Instead of running for the hills, which would have been totally understandable, she stood by me through all of it. She even came with me to the restraining order hearing for moral support. We've talked a lot about how this experience actually fast-tracked our relationship in some ways. We had to have serious conversations about trust, boundaries, and communication much earlier than most couples. Last week, we were having dinner when Megan brought up the whole Allison situation. She said something that really stuck with me. You know, in a weird way, I'm almost grateful to her. If she hadn't gone nuclear, we might have just had a casual work relationship for years without realizing what we could have together. Leave it to Megan to find the silver lining in this whole mess. As for Jason, he and I have cautiously rebuilt a friendship. We grab beers occasionally and have both apologized for believing the worst about each other. He's dating someone new now, a lawyer he met through work who seems really great. We've even done a couple of double dates with him and his girlfriend, which would have been unimaginable a year ago. I guess the lesson in all this is to trust your gut when something feels off about a person or situation. I ignored so many red flags with Allison because I was flattered by her attention, and later because I felt sorry for her. Never again.